In this video, we're going to be talking about proportions, how to write them, and how to solve them. So before we actually go into the actual writing of the proportions or solving them, first we need to be able to understand what they are. And all proportions are just two ratios that are equal to one another. Now, a simple example of this would be the 1/2 and 2/4 example. So these two ratios are actually equal to one another, but they're just represented with different numbers. And the only thing that's separating them is the scale factor. So I know that I can multiply 1 times 2 to give me 2, and 2 times 4, 2 times 2 to give me 4. So these are equivalent ratios, and they're part of a proportion because I'm saying that they're equal to one another. Now let's go on to write our first proportion. So our first story states that Carrie swam 2,400 yards in 20 minutes. How many minutes will it take her to swim 3,000 yards? So the first thing we'll need to do is we actually need to write a word ratio. So that way I'm keeping all of my data and all of my information in the correct order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare the number of yards to the number of minutes that they swam. So now that I have that, I'm actually going to fill in my proportion with the information that I've been given. So I see that Carrie swam 2,400 yards. That'll go in my numerator. And she did this in 20 minutes. My second sentence will give me my second proportion, or my second ratio, I should say. And this says, how many minutes will it take her to swim 3,000 yards? So I know that she'll be swimming 3,000 yards. I don't know how many minutes that's going to take her yet, so I'm going to leave that as the variable x. Now that I have my proportions filled out, I need to find the scale factor between my known values. Now I can see that 2,400 corresponds with 3,000. Now I don't know, I will know that 20 minutes corresponds with my missing value, but I don't know the scale factor yet, so I'm going to have to find that. So I can use an equation that's very similar, or very familiar to you guys. I can say that 2,000, or 2,400, times my scale factor equals 3,000. I can divide on both sides, and I'll see that my scale factor is equal to 3,000 divided by 2,400, which gives me 1.25. So I know that 2,400 times 1.25 will give me 3,000. And if I want these to be proportional, the yards and the minutes to be proportional, I need to multiply 20 minutes times 1.25. So if I multiply 1.25 times 20, that'll give me 25 minutes. So I know in order for Carrie to swim 3,000 yards, that's going to take her 25 minutes. And this is my final answer. Right? So we found the missing value. In our next example, we have that 5 sodas cost us $4.50, and we want to know the cost of 13 sodas. So what we're going to do is we're going to write another word ratio. That's our step 1. So we're going to compare the number of sodas to the amount of money that we're spending. I know that 5 sodas will cost us $4.50. I want to know the cost of 13 sodas. That'll go in my numerator. I don't know how much money that is, so I'm going to leave that as the variable x. So what I've done right now is I filled in my proportion. That was all of this. And now I'll need to find the scale factor. So again, I need to find the scale factor between 5 and 13 in order to find my missing value, or the missing amount, for 450. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite an equation. I'll do this over here so I have a little bit more room. 5 times s equals 13. I divide by 5 on both sides to isolate s. So I get that S is equal to, let's put this in decimal form, 13 divided by 5 gives me 2.6. So I see that my scale factor is 2.6. So if 5 times 2.6 is 13, I need to do $2.50 times 2.6. I multiply this by 450. And I get, and remember we're talking about money, up here it says 11.7, but since this is in dollar form, I need to make sure that this is $11.70. So I've now found my missing value. If you have any other questions about scale factor or finding the missing value in a proportion, please feel free to email me.